Welcome to section 3. This is about the organizations and people dimension. There will be 2 questions in the exam from this section or from this portion of the syllabus. And it will be a mix of Bloom's level 2 and Bloom's level 3 questions. So it's possible that both of them could be BL2 or both BL3 or one BL2 and one BL3. If it's a role question, they will be BL2 question or the Bloom's level 2, that is. If it's an organization structure question, they will be at Bloom's level 3 or application question, that is. The syllabus here is to understand and apply the roles and competencies of the practice. By the way, this section is smaller than the section 1, which was the key concepts, and section 2, which was the value streams and processes. Those two were the longest are the longest sections in the entire course. The remaining onwards from here, which is organization and people, followed by the other 3 dimensions such as information and technology, the partners and suppliers, the remaining 2, that is, and then followed by the concluding lessons on capability model for the practice and the recommendations for practice success are much shorter lessons with much less marks in the exam. So here, the syllabus, continuing on that, we will be understanding the 2 of the roles, key roles for this practice, the deployment manager and the deployment practitioner, and then understand or also know how to apply the organization structure in your real world for this practice. Before we get into specific roles for this practice, the practice guides on their own do not describe the practice management roles, such as the practice owner, practice lead, or practice coach. Those can be defined by the organizations themselves. The roles that we are going to discuss are specialist roles for the practice. And again, the structure and naming of these roles may differ from one organization to another. Therefore, the roles that we will see here in ITIL are not mandatory or even recommended because roles are not job titles. And also we have to acknowledge that one person can take on multiple roles and one role can be assigned to multiple people. And all these roles are described in the context of processes and activities, meaning what they would be doing. The other general thing that we will acknowledge first is the competency codes and profiles proposed by ITIL. Now, this table is not in scope for the exam, and neither is the application of these codes to the 2 roles, the deployment manager and the deployment practitioner, but it is good to know them anyway for real-world application. The 5 competency codes proposed in ITIL are L, A, C, M, and T. L is the leader, A, administrator, C, coordinator or communicator, M, methods and techniques expert, and T, technical expert. And you would be able to understand well or acknowledge that different roles require different competencies. So some roles may require leadership as the primary competency, followed by some administrator skills, followed by communicator skills. Or in some cases, it could be leadership as the first skill, second to be a technical expert, and third to be an administrator. Another role might require a person to be a methods expert, followed by a technical expert, and followed by a coordinator or communicator. Usually, a series of 3 such letters can be combined to make the competency code for a role in the service organization. There are 2 practice-specific roles, deployment management manager and the deployment practitioner. So it's the deployment manager and the deployment practitioner. These roles are often introduced in organizations where the number of deployments is high. The deployments are much less, for example, in smaller organizations, then these roles may not exist at all. So what happens is that they may be combined with or assigned to other roles carrying related responsibilities in development, operations, IT asset teams, and so on. So it's meaning, for example, there could be an IT asset manager who is also performing the deployment management activities, but they may not have the title of a deployment manager per se. We begin by looking at the deployment manager first. This role requires strong knowledge of the organization's business, products and services, technology, platforms, frameworks, and processes. It requires strong planning and project management skills and the ability and authority to coordinate teamwork. The competency profile for this role is LACM. They need to be mainly a leader, followed by an administrator, then communicator coordinator, and lastly, methods and techniques expert. So we don't see that they need to have any strong technical skills. The main skill that they need is the leadership and followed by A, C, and M in reducing order. You can always have a fifth label. You could put the T as well at the end. There's no harm in it. You can have a code made up of 3 letters rather than 4 letters. So all methods of defining their role profile is possible. This role is usually responsible for the planning, management, and coordination of deployment management as a practice, as well as for the deployment of individual releases. Now, the deployment manager may not take part so much in individual releases unless it is somehow related to other deployments as well. For example, resource connections or some conflicts with other deployments or communicating the status of deployments to certain, like a combination of deployments to certain stakeholders, then the manager would come in. Otherwise, we will have the deployment practitioner doing that. So let's look more into the deployment manager's responsibilities. These are planning deployments, ensuring the alignment of the deployment plans with the change release plans, requirements and objectives of those plans, planning, coordinating, and ensuring the availability of the resources needed for the effective completion of deployments, effectively managing overlaps or conflicts among multiple deployments. Now, you will have to remember these as is for the exam because you may have questions around these responsibilities. Then also implementing and maintaining effective control and governance to ensure the integrity of components throughout the deployment practice. As if you notice, these are at a supervisory level or management level, all these responsibilities. These are hardly for any individual deployments. Then managing, ensuring effective interfaces between and coordination with other practices and stakeholders. The word ensure is important here. They will ensure the effective interfaces between and coordination with other practices and stakeholders. Then managing and optimizing deployment resources to ensure optimal levels of availability, capacity, capability to manage deployments, monitoring, reporting, analyzing, and improving deployment performance against defined KPIs.